Welcome to An Actor's Arc. I'm Sean Douglas, and this season I talk with 7 actors in the early leg of their artistic journeys, how they got started, and how they have found their footing. In this episode, I'm happy to welcome JON STEIGER. Hi, JON STEIGER. Really happy to have you on An Actor's Arc with me. Welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.
This year, in this version of the series, we're talking to actors in the earlier part of their career, and you've had a busy run already, I think. But before we get to that, I just want to sort of go back in time a little bit and talk about, do you remember the first time that you wanted to act, or someone told you you should be an actor?
Oh, yeah. I don't know that anybody's ever told me I should be an actor. I kind of discovered the art in fifth grade. When I was in fifth grade, I was in school down in Pearland, Texas. And at the time I was going to middle school, it was mandatory that you took, art, choir, and theater arts as an elective. Like, you had to go through all 3 of them. And I was actually dreading it quite a bit, because when I was in fifth grade, I was a massively shy child.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my, how the tables have turned. But I was massively shy child and dreading the idea of getting up on a stage and performing in front of strangers it was hell. It was a horrible thought. And I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to paint and draw and do all that stuff, which is kind of nice because you can kind of do it by yourself and all that stuff. And so I went into it with the intention that this is not for me. And towards the end of the year, we had to write our own skits, and we did a parody of the late night show with David Letterman. And keep on, like 10 or 11 doing this parody of the late night show. And we wrote it up and we did the different segments, and I was the David Letterman character. And he had that segment, Will It Float, where they just took stuff and they threw it in a fish tank and saw if it floated, and it had like the hula hoop girl and the grinder girl, all that stuff. And we had like this little red plastic bowl. I remember it very distinctly. It had like little fruit outlines on it and a jagged top. And we filled it with water and we put a rubber ducky in it that my parents used for my little brother at the time. And I remember this moment very distinctly, because I took the bowl, I turned around to put it away to go into the next thing. And I remember hearing people laughing. And I don't know why, I don't know what. I call it divine intervention, call it a fool's dream. I thought, I have to do this for the rest of my life. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to do that. I was 10 years old, making a duck float, but I was like, this is it, baby, let's go. And boy, oh boy, was it, because ever since then, it's just been this.
It's fantastic. And did you leave your art skills behind, or do you still do that?
I still do it every now and then. It's more of a hobby. I love the art world. As I was kind of talking to you about, we might talk about a little bit later, but I love the art world. For the most part, I love the artists, not necessarily like the money side of art, but the artists are amazing. And I love doing it because it's just another great creative outlet that allows me to explore with new mediums and try new things that I can do in private and be like, this was really cool, I'm happy about that. Or this was garbage, good thing nobody saw this.
And this all happened in Texas, is that right?
Yeah. So fifth grade, I did it. And then 6th grade, we got to choose our elective. Then I was like, theater arts, this is it. And so I did that. And then 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, all just theater, 24/7, 7/24, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it was everything.
Does that mean, when it's everything, does that mean you were doing it at school? Were you doing it outside of school? Were you auditioning professionally? Yeah,
I pretty much did it at school. I didn't in my zealousness, I didn't consider it anywhere else. I saw it at school and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to just do that. And that's what I thought it was. I didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. But honestly, it was probably for the best, because that's where I got to kind of be in a safe environment and do whatever they were doing and learn as much as I could. Up until my senior year, my 12th grade year of high school, I really hadn't done anything professional. And then when I was in 12th grade, I actually had a pretty big falling out with my high school theater department, which was devastating. However, silver linings, it allowed me to audition for the schools that I wanted to audition for. And it actually allowed me to do my first professional gig at Main Street Theater, which is an old theater down in Houston. And it was Tom Stopper's Coast of Utopia Salvage. And that was my first professional gig. And
was there a moment before your falling out in high school where you had a moment that you said, oh, I just learned something here. Oh, I just advanced in my knowledge?
I think with every role that I did, or every set that I helped build, or every set piece that I moved, or whatever, I definitely took something from it. The reason of the falling out was that I'll say I wanted more. I was putting in my time. I was putting the effort. I was a senior in high school. It was my last year of high school, and I wasn't. Nothing was progressing. Nothing was changing. I had always played like the sidekick, like the kind of slapstick, like the kind of beat 'em up guy. And I was good at it, and I'm still good at it. And I like doing it. But when you're trying to grow and explore and when it's not a game for you, that was the big thing. Theater wasn't a game for me. I knew I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. I knew this was my passion and my calling. And I just, for some reason, I knew that this wasn't helping me. And I wanted to be challenged. And maybe I wasn't right for XYZ, but who cares? I won't know unless I get that opportunity. And I personally felt I wasn't being given those opportunities. So when we were doing, I think it was The Wiz, and I got, the same thing I'd always gotten. I turned it down. I respectfully turned it down. And I was like, but I'll stay on. I want to do crew. And that was perceived as, I think it was perceived as me feeling entitled. That year I had joined choir instead of taking a theater class. And that summer I went to the Stratford Theater Festival in Canada to do a 3-week intensive program. And I was doing AV productions, and I was doing all this instead of a theater class, which I think also rubbed them the wrong way. But in my mind, I was diversifying my portfolio for them. And while I didn't break any of their rules or anything like that, they felt I had broken the spirit of what it was. And after that, it was just nothing, it was absolutely devastating.
It sounds like you were not only really focused, but acting on that focus and looking for opportunities, and kind of ahead of your time, maybe, in thinking about the things that you needed as you were looking forward, which is kind of extraordinary for a high school student.
It taught me a lot, and learning experiences are worth their weight in gold sometimes.
So you said you had that time in your senior year to do a professional show, and also to really prepare for auditions for schools. And what was that experience like?
I didn't really want to stay in Texas for school. I had a bunch of friends who went to Oklahoma City University, and I was born in Rochester, New York, and my mom went to a Nazareth College that has a good theater program as well. And, I was getting to go to these different places and audition and get really good feedback. And then I was online one day, or I got an email from AADA, the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And I was like, what? a school just for theater? What is this? And at this time I was doing Coastal Utopia, and I was meeting some of these really cool, amazing people. And they were telling me, they were like, look, if you're really serious about this, you have to spend some time studying in either LA or New York. I got into these schools, and the only one that was in New York City was AADA. And I thought, well, I have this opportunity to do this right out of high school. Maybe I should jump into that, And this was a 2-year conservatory with the optional 3rd year. And both my parents are science professors. And so I think the idea of me going to not 4-year school was kind of scary for them. But the best thing about one of the greatest privileges of my life is having parents who have been really supportive of me and able to help me do what I do. And I made the jump to going to New York, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. It was one of the scariest decisions I've ever made in my life.
Can I ask you some of the things that scared you about making that choice, or about being in New York when you first arrived? What?
Gosh, are you kidding me? I went from suburban Texas to 30th and Madison. It was culture shock beyond all. It was the definition of culture shock. There's a sick kind of person that throws together 100 actors in one building who are just turning like 18, 19, and give them free range of downtown Manhattan. Like it's a bad combination, and when you're not ready for it, and I wasn't ready for what that meant to be on your own, and what that meant to be with a bunch of different people from a bunch of different backgrounds, and what that meant to have higher education that was more focused. And, college really is what you make of it. And again, there were times, especially in my 3rd year, where I thought I was getting that same kind of pigeonhole. I was in high school, and everything kind of flipped for me when I did a play called Little Dog Laugh by Douglas Carter Beane. And the director of it was Brad Rouse. And Brad, from what I understand, really fought for me to be in this particular role. And it was a bigger role, and it was, I was playing, it was for a male prostitute, and there was going to be nudity in it and all this other stuff, things I'd never done or had done anything like that. And a lot of me being where I am is I believe people taking a chance on me. And I take that very seriously. If somebody's willing to take a chance on me, they're going to get something great. But it was a turning around point. And I think people started seeing me a little bit differently after that. And then that year ended. And so I'm really happy that I did that 3rd year of training, because it was desperately needed in my mind.
You graduated from American Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Yes.
And because you were already in New York, I'm guessing that's the environment you continue to stay in, because you'd already made connections there.
Yeah. At that point, I was like, cool, I'm here. Let's do it. Let's figure this out. And at that point, I pretty much took just about anything I could get. The one thing I'll say about this industry is that there is no right answer, right? Like I've read I love reading autobiographies of actors and stuff like that, because I find it really interesting. But you can look at 100 and nobody has the same story. For me, that was a benefit, because then I knew like what I should do, but I didn't know what to do. And I was trying to do all of the things that I was supposed to do, and they weren't working, but I didn't want to wait for those to pan out. So I just kind of had to jump in with both feet. And I think,
so can I ask you about students who are just in that position, just graduating?
Yeah.
Were you, or did you already have an agent? Were you also doing things on your own? Were you pursuing projects out independent of an agent? How did that work?
my company year, my third year, we had a showcase where they would invite a bunch of agents, managers, industry people to come in and take a look at us. And I got one interview from that, and it did not pan out at all. So I was flying blind, and I was on Actors Access and backstage all the time, just looking at stuff, trying to get something. And
for the casual listener,
yes.
What are those things? Can you explain what those things are?
Yeah. Actors Access and backstage, they're like casting breakdowns. So they're essentially, job listings and audition listings that you can self-submit for, have your agent submit for, and you cross your fingers and hope you get an audition.
Cool.
I hit the ground running as much as I could with just me, and I did okay. I worked quite a bit doing a bunch of random stuff. I don't know how I had my parents had to support me for a little while, but that was the next goal, was like getting off of the parental teat and trying to make my own way. And I think shortly after I got out of school, my friends and I we filmed a short film that I wrote and produced and act and co-starred in, called Serial Killer, spelled like breakfast cereal, about these two roommates. One is a total slob. The other's he wants to be, wants to be a boxer and stuff. And he goes and gets breakfast, and all his cereal's gone because his roommate's eating it all, and he knows it. And so he has this fantasy that he's in a boxing ring with his much bigger roommate, and instead of boxing gloves, they're using cereal boxes. And that was the whole premise of this. I literally was like, hey, what if this was a boxing glove? Ha ha. And then I wrote a script about it. I was trying to cook up my own stuff. I was trying to jump on other people's things. I was trying to search for other stuff.
Let's define what that means, right? Because you said you're still being supported in part by your parents.
Yeah.
So did that mean that the either shows you were doing or the projects you were working on your own, was any of that bringing in money for you? Were there contracts, or were they small contracts? Just what does that young actor's life look like?
Yeah, I mean, they were small contracts, or they weren't contracts at all. I did a lot of work for the Scranton Shakespeare Festival because their artistic director, Michael Bradshaw Flynn, came to the Academy a bunch. He was friends with Doug and saw us a bunch. And so I did like 3 years there, 3 summers there of summer stock and small contracts. It's a non-for-profit theater. I'm trying to think of some of the stuff I did. A number of background roles and extra stuff. I did eventually land on a company called Traveling Lantern Theater Company, which was like this family-friendly theater company that did like 45-minute shows like Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, show on Ben Franklin or whatever, like educational kind of theater. And my then girlfriend and I did that for a couple months. We would drive around the Northeast doing these plays. And that actually paid the bills. Not much else, but it paid the bills. And honestly, I was like, cool. I like it. Let's do it. And, it was non-union. It was just us doing all this stuff. It was hard work because kids are relentless. I was actually really happy to do this low-paid, non-union grunt work because a lot of kids were getting a lot out of it. And I remember being a kid and seeing tiny, I didn't see a lot of theater as a kid, but I remember the stuff that I did see and the importance it had on me. And so I think that's something in my career and in my life I want to experiment more with is theater for younger audiences. I've started puppet lessons recently, and I recently met with the guy who's the head puppeteer, the head of the puppet department at Oakland's Children's Fairyland, and have been working on a lot of puppetry. So that's
why just because it's cool, it's interesting, fun.
I grew up with the Peanuts, the Muppets, Like a lot of those childhood Looney Tunes, like all that Mickey Mouse, I grew up with a lot of that stuff. And the Muppets has always been something to me that's been pretty amazing. And it's always, puppetry has always been something I've been fascinated by and really enjoyed. I talk about old theater when I was a kid. I remember, I think I was in kindergarten or first grade. These people came in and they had hand puppets and they were teaching us about dental hygiene. Yeah. And I remember it. Like I remember specific scenes from that. And so it's always been something that's kind of stuck with me. And then my beautiful fiance, Gemma, knew I was into this and she bought me my first practice puppet. And so someone got me in touch with David Corse, who is a puppeteer. And he's amazing. And he's been teaching me. And I've been having a blast with it. And I've been getting to meet some really cool people and learn a lot of cool things. And puppetry as an art form in theater is becoming massively popular, especially in London. Yeah, I don't know. Check out Life of Pi off on the West End. The story of it is basically this kid and this tiger, and the tiger right. They use in the show is a puppet, and it's manned by 3 individuals. Well, there are 7 puppeteers who handle that tiger, and recently all 7 of those puppeteer won an Olivier for Best Supporting Actor as a tiger. Rightly so.
Well, how great that your passion can also, or one of your passions, might also get you work one day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's do what you love and the money will come, right? Isn't that the saying?
Here's what I'm really fascinated about you so far in our conversation, Jon, is that you're an actor who wants to do multiple kinds of things, not just comedy, but continuing to explore and expand yourself. You are a scrappy entrepreneur, writing and filming your own material. You are a puppeteer, and you're still trying to get work as a quote unquote normal actor in the business. So that's fascinating to me that you've got that much creativity going on in so many areas.
I have a lot of great privileges in my life that I try not to take for granted, and I try to apply into things that can either, I really love trying to help people with what I do. And I love doing what I do to the extent that people get really inspired by it. That's one of the big triggers for me when I first started this was I wanted to do things that inspired people. The other day, we don't have stage door anymore because of COVID, but the other day someone was waiting there and they just said thank you because they identified so much with Scorpius and they really appreciated having a really truthful and honest representation of who they were on stage. And that means something to me. Like it always has and always will. For me, because I figured out what I wanted to do so long ago, it's kind of given me the freedom and the joy and the privilege to explore in many different ways. Cause it's like, cool, I'm great. I booked Harry Potter. Well, what else is out there? And it's like, of course, that takes up most of your time, and you have to give that the respect and the work that it requires. But once you've given it that, and once you have it, and once you feel safe where you can keep growing and playing and all that other stuff, then you can start to be like, okay, cool. Or at least then I could say, okay, cool. Let's look at doing this benefit reading. Let's look at puppetry classes. Let's look at this, that, and the other thing. And it's all just feeding off of itself. And I think as creatives in general, we just have this urge to just play and make and
you're being a scrappy entrepreneurial actor, finding your way in New York. What was the thing that said, oh, I can make a living? What was the first opportunity that
it would have been those tours. It would have been those Traveling Lantern theater tours, because I did one with my then partner, and then I did another one with a friend of mine, and a couple months after I'd done the first round of it, and then that ended, and I was kind of pressured by my then partner to kind of get a job and XYZ, and So I started working at Party City at a Party City in New Jersey. And again, as creatives, it's hard for us to kind of sit down on our hands and not really do anything, just like, scan things and stuff like that. So I tried to like pitch ideas of like, hey, maybe we can make this kind of display, or maybe like this VR is becoming a thing. Maybe we could like have VR party rooms that people can look at. And it was just like, no, what? No. But then I saw a listing on Playbill for ushers for the Hudson Theater. The Hudson was reopening. It was going to be the newest Broadway theater, even though it was technically physically the oldest Broadway theater that was still standing. Well, one of the oldest Broadway theaters that was still standing. And I was like, oh my God, I've been wanting to get into ushering for a while, because it's like, you're in it, right? Like you're at a Broadway theater, you're watching all these shows, you can meet all these people. Like, let's do that. And so I got the job, and that started what I would say is the kind of renaissance, or like the big domino effect of my professional career as it is right now. So I worked at the Hudson. I ushered Sunday in the Park with George for Jake Gyllenhaal and Annalise Ashford, 1984 with Olivia Wilde. And then when Parisian Woman came around with Uma Thurman, I had booked another kids tour with TheaterWorks USA. And this one was really different, because now all of a sudden, boom, I could get into the union, and boom, I was making 3 times what I was making on the those other tours. And it was going to take me out of town for like a month at a time. And this was something I would really want to be doing. I'll never forget the audition for it. I walked in and they were like, so just read this, but we want you to read it as like, just think of the most quintessential Upper West Side Jewish woman. I go, stop. I got it. I went out in the hall. I tweaked a little bit. I came in. I did it. And they were like, awesome. Yeah. So it's like a 3-month thing, and this and that, all this other stuff, and blah, 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 all these things. And I was like, cool, awesome. I don't know why they're asking me about my schedule, whatever. And then I got the phone call that I had booked it. And we were doing Skippy John Jones' Snow What? And I have to say it like that because it had a question mark and an exclamation point at the end of it. And it was like a retelling of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, based off of I don't know if you're familiar with the Skippy John Jones series, but it's the Siamese cat who thinks he's a Chihuahua because he has a really tiny body but a really big head. It's really cute. It's really funny, really cute. But I played a character. I played Mama. I played his mom. I played one of the Seven Dwarves characters. Excuse me. And I played a character called the Wicked Bruja, which is the Wicked Witch. Bruja is witch in Spanish. And I didn't quite realize that character is not in the book. So the kids, when I first came out, and you meet her with this big song. And when I get out there, the adults that I did it for loved it because she talked like this, and she was really big and loud, and she was extravagant and amazing.
Yeah. Is that a job that you submitted for yourself, or did you have an agent by this time?
No,
submitted for yourself. Great.
Just me submitting. They do a lot of calls on a lot of those breakdown services that we'd kind of mentioned. And I got in at the right time, met the right people, and did the right thing. And they were like, great, have fun on the road. And I was like, I will. I finished that in March of 2018. And this is important because March of 2018, Parisian Woman had just ended. And the Hudson was about to go dark for 3 months while they loaded in Head Over Heels. At the same time, that same company, ATG, that was running the Hudson, operating out of the Hudson, had taken over the Lyric Theater, which was just getting ready to do a show called Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. It was this show that came over from London. And I was like, oh, well, they're hiring. I know these people. Let me give them a call. And I was like, can I jump on the team? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. come on in. So I was there, and I remember the first time I worked, it was the invited dress rehearsal for part 2.
So let me clarify. When you went to this theater where that the Harry Potter show was opening or rehearsing, you were going in what capacity?
I was going as an usher. And so I was an usher there, and it was part 2, invited dress. And I was up in the balcony. Again, this is one of those moments that I remember very clearly in my life. I was house left in the balcony, way up there. They do the opening. They have like this big opening movement dance number at the beginning of that part. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then Anthony Boyle walked out as Scorpius Malfoy. And he started going, and I was watching, and I was like, I'm going to do that. And again, I was like, I don't know how, but this is so up my alley. I could totally be in the show, and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do it. And to the point where we had after one of the previews, they had like a little party for us, like the cast, the crew, the front of house, stuff like that. And Anthony Boyle and Sam Clement, who played Scorpius and Albus respectively, were standing at the bar. And I looked at my friends. I was like, okay, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to stand there. You let me know if I'm the same height as them. And I walked over, stood there for a second, walked away, and my friends were laughing uncontrollably because I'm an idiot. But they were like, yeah, no, you're the right height. And so I was at this time. And then so fast forward to like July of that year, I was meeting with my friends because we were doing a podcast called Not Yet Famous, where we found people who were working in the industry, but you just didn't know because they hadn't had their big break yet or what have you. But they were consistently working in the industry because we wanted to do something. Like we have a hard time just sitting still. We wanted to make something and do something. So podcast, right? And as we were having this meeting, I was bad, and I was on my phone looking at my email, and I saw a casting notification for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child Year 2 for Scorpius and Albus. And I was like, oh my God. And I immediately self-submitted for it. And then a couple of days later, they're like, cool, you got an audition, come in like 2 weeks from now, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. I was like, all right, here we go. And I said to myself, I was like, look, you might not get it. You might not get it. You know that. But it's not going to be because you didn't work your butt off. And so I got with an acting coach that we had interviewed, and I got with my vocal coach, and I was doing various workouts every day, listening to the fan-made Cursed Child soundtrack, because this was before the soundtrack had come out yet. It was just a bunch of Imogen Heap songs. And I had the sides for the scene, and I told my supervisor, I was like, can I be in the house for this act or this, that, and the other thing? Though, yeah, sure. So I was watching it every day because I was like, okay, this is the big leg up I have on everybody else, is that I can see it every single day. And I worked and I worked and I worked and I worked. So I had that initial audition. I did the sides. He said, cool, that was great. Escorted me out. It took about 30 seconds to do, maybe a minute to do that whole audition. And after I finished, I started to panic because I was like, there was no notes. There was nothing. Like it was in and out. I was like, oh my God, what had just happened? And I called the coach I was working with at the time. She goes, okay, listen, they have 2 piles right now. They have a no and they have a maybe pile. There is no yes pile yet. There's a no and a maybe pile. You just need to get in the maybe pile. I don't know what it was, but for whatever reason, when she said that, I was like, yeah, okay, that's okay. Like it calmed me down so much, because all of a sudden it wasn't just like, you didn't book it, you booked it or you didn't book it. It was, you either didn't get it or
it's possible.
It's possible. And when you say it's possible, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, fuck, it is possible. Like I can do this. And then I got the callback. I was like, great. Callback was from Movement Callback. Did that. Fast forward. We're now that was end of July. We're now mid-September. I had gone through 7 rounds. I was on my 7th round of auditions. And I was I had just done a week, like 1 week, 3 days in that week, I had done a specialized audition, a movement audition, and another reading audition. And the reading audition was for John Tiffany, the director, and some other people, like the assistant directors and stuff like that. And I thought that one was the last one. And as I was leaving, they were like, John, can you come back Sunday with the library scene? I was like, yeah, of course. And I remember almost like running late for work at the Hudson. And after I had this audition and hoofing it back and just being like, I'm going to be Scorpius Malfoy. I'm going to be Scorpius Malfoy. Oh my God, I can't believe it. This is going to happen. Oh my God, I don't know. I hadn't booked it yet, but I was just like in my brain, I was like, yeah, one more audition. And I was like, no, one more audition. And I got to work. And then Sunday came around and I went to the audition. And I walked into the room and there must have been about 20, 25 people in there, including Sonia Freeman and Colin Callender, the head producers of the project, John Tiffany, Des Kennedy, Stephen Hoggett. I mean, like, a chunk of that room had won a Tony for this show, and they were about to watch. And
what did that do to you?
I don't remember.
Do you feel like it excited you, amped you? Did it terrify you?
It definitely terrified me. But when I got into it and got going, I forgot. And that was the greatest gift that could have happened to me that entire day. And I remember I did my first reading and it was pretty solid. And then John Tiffany came up and he has this amazing way of speaking to actors. Like he's a director, but you don't really know it. And he's just very cool, calm, collected. He came up and he was just chatting to me about whatever and gave me some stuff to play with for the next scene. And so I did it again. And I remember finishing and I like turned around and I heard everyone in the room go, whoa, like everyone had a verbal response. And I kind of like,
that feels good.
And and it was I don't know if you've seen the show, but that particular scene is kind of a gut-wrenching scene. And he's like kind of putting it all out on the line there. And it's all kinds of stuff. So I was like emotionally pretty raw because I was essentially yelling at my best friend who had betrayed me on some level, in the sense that I put all my hopes and dreams and stuff, and I just needed him to make my life better. And he couldn't even do that. And it was this whole thing. And I kind of like looked up and I saw John and he was like, that was fucking brilliant. And I was like, cool. Oh, cool. I couldn't even like quite process what had just happened. And then they had me do another scene, just jump into another scene. And I did that. And he like came up to me and he's like, that was great. And he shook my hand and he gave me a little wink and I walked out. And as I was walking out, I was like, oh, did my life just change? And that feeling was for about 5 seconds before I opened the door and saw 3 other people in the waiting room. There was another guy who had Scorpius sides. And I was like, but you don't know. And that I don't know was really hollowing. And my body crashed because it was 7 rounds, 2 months of really high, intense pressure and trying to make sure that I was doing the right thing and this and that and all this other stuff. And my body was just like, we're done. Poof. At that time, I was still a practicing member of the Catholic Church. So I went to the Actors Church on 49th and 8th and sat there for a little bit because I had hours to kill before work. And I was just like, praying and kind of taking time for myself in a safe spot that I knew. And then I went to work and I was wrecked. When I say I was wrecked, I was wrecked. And so we're doing Head Over Heels and they call it's time for our break. And I was like, I don't want to take a break. Like, I don't want to be around other people. I kind of just want to be by myself. And he's in the middle of Mad About You. He's up there. He's singing to his sheep. He's like, I'm mad about you. And I'm like, I'm just kind of in this daze. And my phone rings. And I don't answer it in time. And I don't recognize the number. But I kind of like pull away and I listen to the message, and it was John Tiffany. He was like, just give me a call back when you get a chance. And I was like, I thought I was going to throw up. Like, telling it again, I feel like I'm going to throw up. Thank God I'm home. And so my best friend was working there with me, and she came back from break, and I said, I just got to call John Tiffany. If he calls, like, and I at this point I tried to call him back, but he didn't answer. So we were playing phone tennis with probably one of the most, which I thought might be the most important phone call of my life at the time. And I was like, just call him. You just call me. I missed it. If he does, can you just cover my spot? She's like, yeah, okay. No sooner I said that and turned around and walked away, then my phone rang again. And I was like, this is it. And I ran to the basement, but I had to stay on the stairs because if I went any further, I would have lost signal. So I'm on the staircase in what we called the Harris room when I'm supposed to be working during Head Over Heels. It was just a beautiful tableau of hot mess. And I answer it, and we're chatting, and he's like, I just wanted to say it was really great to meet you and get to work with you and all this other stuff. And I was like, for whatever reason, my body was like, if this is a courtesy phone call to say he had a really great time and blah, 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 and I didn't get it, I will reach through this phone and I will throttle him. And he goes, and as you know, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child is having its West Coast debut in San Francisco. Would you like to be Scorpius Malfoy in San Francisco? And I remember taking a second and going, I would very much like that. Like, literally, I would very much like that. That's the only thing that would come out of my body was I would very much like that. Again, it was one of these moments that you just remember. And so he's like, great, cool. Now, don't tell anybody. You can't tell anybody. You can call, you can tell your mom, but that you can't tell anybody else, and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. I was like, of course. He was like, now I know you're at work now. If you get a chance, just go outside and have a nice little scream. And, are you working at the Lyrics? And I was like, I am. He's like, look, we're doing this at the time, Lumos, they were doing the big Lumos gala that weekend. And he was like, come down, we'll have a drink and we'll cheers and all this stuff. I was like, great, amazing, awesome. And I grabbed my best friend. I pulled her down to the basement with me, and I'm silently like freaking out, pacing back and forth. And she's getting really scared. She's like, you need to tell me what's going on. And I grab her, and I'm holding her, and there are tears coming down my face. And I'm like, I'm Scorpius in San Francisco. She grabs me, and we're both standing there crying. Keep in mind, we need to be upstairs working. And we pull back, and we're like looking at each other. And I hear from behind me this door open, and this woman comes out. She's just some random audience member, looks at us holding each other crying, gives us the weirdest look, and slowly goes back upstairs. And to this day, I always wonder what that woman thought when she came out of the bathroom and saw us. And so then I did. I was like, I'll be right back. I ran out. I screamed a little outside, let it out. I called my mom. I said, look, everything's fine. Everything's okay. But I just need you to be up and by your phone at this time. I went home and I FaceTimed both my grandparents and my parents at the same time. And I got to tell them the news. And that was a really, really special moment. That was really, really cool.
Did you negotiate yourself? Did you find an agent who was willing to represent you since you had this going?
I called my acting coach as well. I was like, all right, this is it. Like, we got it. All right, let's go. And Tessa Faye, she's amazing. And she was like, all right, great. You, my friend, have the golden ticket. You could approach just about any agent in the city and they will take you. So we need to figure out what the right one is for you. And she's like, I know this guy, Jeremy Liner, he works at Nickelodeon Company. He's great. He's a friend of mine. Let me get you in touch with him. I was like, cool. Got in touch with him, met the team. I'm kind of an impulse guy, and I trust my gut more than I probably should, because they were really the only agency that I'd met with. I reached out to another, but I was like, I don't know what it is, but these people, I'm feeling it. And so, yeah, shortly after booking, they took me on and they took care of all the negotiation stuff. And one of the things for me that I sold it for them was they were like, cool, great. You got Potter. What do you want to do in the next 8 months before you go? And I was like, actually. And so, we were trying to focus more on film and TV and stuff like that. And nothing came through. I had a few callbacks for some things here and there. But it was just nice to start shifting gears, because now, instead of, going to Pearl Studio for a non-union touring gig or a like extra shoot, I was at the Fox casting office and going in for this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, cool, like this is okay. So now we're starting to shift. And they got me in classes for film and TV that were absolutely amazing. And, they were helping me out, and it was what I needed at the time. And they're still just great. And I love being with them, and they've gotten me, they're really excited for this next phase. And so it's all just like coming together and stuff like that. But that was, I think I got my agents the hard way, which was book the gig and then go.
Well, you certainly have leverage.
I did. And it was, boy, oh boy. But,
so let's just fast forward. And so let's jump to, you've been in San Francisco doing Harry Potter and the Cursed Child for how long?
By the end of the run, I'll have done it for a year, pre and post pandemic.
What were the lessons you took away from that experience, from that time of doing a show for that long? Who did you learn from, or what did you learn on your own?
John, Tiffany, and Stephen Huggett and Des Kennedy are fantastic directors, and they're brilliant. And they know this piece inside and out and upside down, but they're also willing to play with you, and they recognize that you're an individual, and you as an individual bring so much different to the character. They're the same lines, it's the same blocking, it's the same costumes, but I am different from every other Scorpius just because I'm me.
What was challenging about doing this role for so long?
The work pace is tough. This show 8 times a week, even 6 times a week it's physically tough, and you have to find that balance. So finding that balance took a while, and allowing myself to break out of some of the mold and keep it fresh and new, and just continuously be in a state of active listening in a show you've done over 250 times, 300 times. There's always something new, always, across the board. And so, trying to not find those new things, but let those new things happen to you, and being like, oh, this was fun, but then not forcing it again or changing it. It's a day-to-day thing. And that's because we have a live audience day-to-day, and they require different things.
John, let's finish with 3 easy questions. Share with me the name of an actor, and I know there may be many possibilities for this, but just one actor who you feel like you really admire, you've learned something from them by watching them or by working with them. Who might that person be, or one of those people be?
I'll go 2. I'll go quick. 1, Tom Hanks. I've always admired and respected his work so much. And if you need a reason why, watch literally any of his films. He's fantastic and amazing.
What is it that you admire about that work?
He makes it look so easy and so believable. And he seems very super chill. And all the stories I hear is that he's very wonderful to work with and be around. And I off camera and in my professional career, I want people to be able to say that about me. I want people to be like, I really enjoyed working with him. And he's good, but he's also like just a nice guy to work with. I want people to like working with me. I want people to like my work, but I want them to like working with me too. And I think he's a great personification of that. And then there's an actress that I've seen in Canada at the Stratford Theatre Festival called Christine McKenna, and I think she's one of the most talented human beings I've ever seen in my life. I saw her one summer in Rep. She did a one-woman show called Shakespeare's Will, where she played Anne Hathaway, Shakespeare's wife. It was a 90-minute one-woman show, just her, that she absolutely knocked out of the park. And she was playing Richard and Richard III in Rep at the same time. It was amazing. She's amazing. I want to work with her so badly.
Something that really delights you about acting in the live theater?
Having people connect with the stuff that we're doing on a really personal level, and gaining a much greater sense of who they are, and taking comfort in that they're seen.
One thing you want to get better at, to accomplish, or tick off your theatrical wish list as you move forward?
Ooh. I don't know what puppetry would look like in my life, but I definitely want to play more with that for sure. I've got some writing that I want to do. I find myself drawn to strong female characters because I grew up with a very strong female character in my life. And so I've got some writing that I want to do. And there's roles that I would love to play. Like there's a Neil Simon trilogy called the Brighton Beach trilogy. Or the Broadway Bound trilogy, if you want. Like, I'd love to do that. All three in Rep as Eugene Morris Jerome, the lead. Do that while I can still play it. I would love to play Robin in the Batman series. I'd love to be like a really honest. There's not to jump into it much, but I remember the Batman animated series. They had an episode once where the guy Robin got a lead on the guy who'd killed his parents, and he went on this whole revenge thing, and it followed this like beautiful revenge arc. And I was like, I want to see that. I honestly want to see like a revenge flick on Robin and just see what that turmoil would look like for someone who's being mentored by this person who does understand what he's going through. Mm-hmm. But never necessarily got the closure because they chose to take a different path. Because I do believe when you hit tragedy, and I've hit tragedy in my own ways in my own life, and I have been presented by many different paths, and I've chosen the ones that I've chosen, and they've gotten me to where I am. And so I think they're the right ones. But when you're in those moments, you don't really know what the right one is, and you can only think of one thing or the other. And I'm always fascinated by the choices people take when they're presented with great tragedy like that. And so I think a really honest story and I just think of Robin because I've always loved Batman, but I would love to do Robin one day. I think just thinking about it, but there's so much I want to do. There's so much I want to get better at. I constantly want to get better. This
does not surprise me at all, John, after talking with you for a while. Thank you so much for joining me and talking with me and sharing your journey.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it, and I hope it didn't bore you.
This has been An Actor's Arc, created and hosted by Sean Douglas, with special guest, Jon Steiger. Theme music by Chris Kriz, sound engineering by Grover Hallway. An Actor's Arc was made possible by a grant from the alumni of Northwestern University.